Now it's time for Lefties Losing It, and let's check in with CNN. They're trying hard to cope with the reality that the man they and the left has branded as some sort of modern-day Hitler is actually hugely popular in the only Jewish state. There are thank you messages on the beaches of Tel Aviv. There are thank you messages in the leading newspapers of Israel. The nation, its people, are grateful to a leader who has brought their hostages home and brought peace to the region. They're wearing Trump hats in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, hats that say Trump the peace president. And CNN had to acknowledge that there were plenty of MAGA caps being worn in Hostage Square.
And, of course, endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause for President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in that crowd over at Hostage Square.
But yet, despite all that, despite the fact that world leaders were jumping on planes within minutes of notice to be in the Middle East for this announcement, CNN anchor Jake Tapper, you know, the dude who noticed Joe Biden's cognitive decline only after he stopped being the Democrat candidate. Well, yes, Jake tries to downplay the enormity of this peace deal.
Obviously, blessed are the peacemakers indeed, but it is worth pointing out this is a ceasefire deal, right? This is not a larger peace deal about a Palestinian state of any sort and who gets to rule a Palestinian state and Israel gets security guarantees, how, and all that. That is still TBD, right?
I mean, yes, but, because the yes, but part of that is that, yes, this is the first phase of this deal where the two key parts of that was a ceasefire and the release of the hostages and also the release of Palestinian prisoners.
Just pathetic work there from Jake Tapper, but not surprising. And let's stick with CNN. They have another anchor here, Christian Amanpour, having to issue an apology for insensitive comments suggesting the hostages, the Israeli hostages, were treated better than Gazans.
But I regret also saying that they might have been treated better than many Gazans because Hamas used these hostages as pawns and bargaining chips. But that was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to.
Yes, it was insensitive and wrong, CNN. Also wrong was not to keep this deranged Democrat accountable. Here is Jason Crow refusing to give any credit to Donald Trump for the peace deal.
How much credit does President Trump deserve for this remarkable agreement?
Well, this does need to end the terrible, terrible tragedy we've seen the last couple of years. It's been awful. I don't trust Donald Trump. There's no reason to trust Donald Trump. But I will, of course, work with any administration that wants to achieve those things.
Oh, those Democrats are so bitter and petty, aren't they? And so are many of the journalists. And is it any wonder that Donald Trump is telling them precisely what he thinks of them and their activism masquerading as impartial news reporting? Here he is with a rather polite takedown of a Politico reporter.
Are you considering walking that back?
Who are you with?
Politico, Dasha Burns, sir.
Dasha, Politico. Politico's gone bad. They've been so wrong about everything. Politico, Politico has been so wrong about everything. Let's get somebody else to ask some questions. Do you mind? Is that all right? Because Politico is fake news.
Now, one has to wonder whether this incredible achievement by Donald Trump will lead to a cure for TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Here is TDS sufferer and pretend token conservative on The View, Elisa Farah. She promised to wear a MAGA cap on the show, on The View, if Trump got the hostages out. Remember this?
My point when I say I'm not going to be apocalyptic, it's not changing a tune. It's not making every single thing a 5-alarm fire. Yeah. If he does good, if he gets the Israeli hostages out, I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on the show and say, thank you for doing it. Yeah. She'll knock it right off my head.
Well, she lied. She didn't wear the cap. We had someone check. Are we surprised? I'm not. Now, before we move on to more cases of incurable TDS, let's check in with what is happening in Virginia. Now, there is something wrong, terribly wrong, with the modern Democrat woman. It's not just the squad. There are so many exhibiting signs of lunacy, signs of hysteria and indecency, unable to call out the most reprehensible of behaviours. Watch Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears. She's the Republican candidate for governor. She questions Abigail Spanberger about why she hasn't asked Jay Jones, the Democrat nominee for Attorney General, to step down after his vile behaviour was exposed. Now, watch this. It's quite chilling.
That's why I'm wondering why my opponent won't say beyond it's abhorrent and disgusting, why she won't say it is not okay and that he must leave the race because Jay Jones advocated the murder, Abigail, the murder of a man, a former speaker, as well as his children who were 2 and 5 years old. You have little girls. What would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail? You're running to be governor.
She just stood there with a grin on her face, a smirk. If that isn't disqualifying, then I don't know what is. If Virginia votes for that, if leftists want to stand behind that woman instead of Winsome Earl-Sears, then they deserve everything they get. Now, let's get back to examining whether TDS, even some of the worst cases of TDS, can be cured. I'm not convinced, but I've got to say Bill Maher gives me a little bit of hope. He suffered from a severe case for years. Yes, Bill Maher, despite being occasionally sensible, suffered from stage 4 TDS and did everything in his power to ensure Donald Trump would not be re-elected. He was right there with loony Robert De Niro spewing absolute craziness.
If he wins the election, you won't be on the show anymore. He'll come looking for me. There'll be things that happen that none of us can imagine. That's what happens in that kind of a dictatorship, which is what he says. Let's believe him. Take him at his word.
I did from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, I said from the very beginning, this guy is never going to concede power, and he still hasn't.
No.
He still hasn't. He still admitted he lost the last election, and he advertises that he will go on.
But Bill Maher's had a recovery, somewhat of a recovery that was turbocharged when Kid Rock organised a dinner with the president. Now he is singing his praises and trying to make other TDS sufferers see sense. Here he is with Hollywood actor William H. Macy.
You cannot ever deny success. You just have to give your respect, even if it's not your thing. Have the humility to give it up for enormous success on any level.
I agree.
Trump, not my choice, didn't vote for him, but somehow,
a lot of people did.
And he's... I can't deny the success.
I can't either.
Yeah.
Yes, he is the President, William H. Macy, and you've certainly come a long way from the days when you were having little tantrums about Donald Trump, telling anyone who would listen how much you loathe the president. You even used your Screen Actors Guild Award to smash Trump. Goodness me, we'd have come a long way.
When I went to the White House, these are all the horrible things he's called me over the years.
Did you give him that and he signed it for you?
Correct.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I know. It's my prized possession.
What a signature. That's one of the best signatures of
stupid, angry, dopey.
Now to one of the worst TDS cases ever. This man has completely trashed his own reputation. That's Sam Harris. Even he was eating humble pie this week.
Trump got a deal done. And that's something I don't believe you believe would have happened under a President Harris.
It pains me somewhat to admit this, but yes, he's certainly been good for the Middle East and for Israel in a way that I don't think there was any reason to expect Harris to be good. And Biden certainly wasn't good, apart from the first few weeks after October 7th, or maybe a couple of months after October 7th.
Yes, Sam Harris eating humble pie is a joyous moment, but he's still fully afflicted with TDS. I mean, it wasn't long ago when he was saying crazy stuff like this. Of all the conspiracy theories, he latched onto this one.
this just could be based on a faulty intuition about ballistics, but I'm surprised that a rifle round making any degree of contact with an ear wouldn't do more damage. I think a shattered piece of shrapnel from a teleprompter is far more likely to have done that to his ear than a rifle round.
That's so silly.
I would have used stronger words than silly, but it's far from the dumbest or craziest thing that Sam Harris has said about Donald Trump. Remember this rant?
At that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden. But even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right, or China, it is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a firefly to the sun.
Just utterly unhinged, and you saw Konstantin kissing at the end of that clip. I wonder if he was thinking of Sam Harris when he posted this yesterday. He wrote, "It's time for people with Trump derangement syndrome to admit they were wrong. Sam Harris may be too far gone. He is, after all, too broken with TDS. He's gone from an intellectual to a caricature, a dumb person's idea of a smart person. But there is hope for others, including actress Frances Barber, who posted this on X. She said, I had TDS and I'm now eating my words. Bravo, Frances. Well, thank God for that. A woman who most certainly does not have TDS is the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado. Now, we all know why Trump didn't get the award. It had nothing to do with deadlines. He should have got it in his first term for the Abraham Accords. But this year's winner dedicated the award to the president. This is a gracious woman. Hopefully, she'll be the next president of Venezuela.
And they decided to dedicate it to President Trump because he deserves it. Because not only has he been involved in only a few months in solving 8 wars, but his actions have been decisive to have Venezuela now at a threshold of freedom after 26 years of tyranny.
Now, while elderly, almost uniformly white folk take to the streets to resist Trump, to resist his law and order efforts, the communities afflicted with violent crime are seeing a real change, a positive change. Listen to this lady in Memphis.
Some of y'all might get mad at me. And at this point, I don't give a damn. I'm not into politics. I'm not into all of that extra stuff that people be losing their life over. I ain't into all that. We human, whatever. But I will say thank you to Trump for bringing these National Guards and doing what they're doing down here in Memphis right now. You know, for the first time in 5 years. I've been in my home for 5 years. And for the first time, my kids have been able to play in the backyard and be able to do it comfortably. I haven't heard a gunshot in 2 weeks. I haven't seen strange people walk up and down the street. Just a few weeks ago, I had somebody walk on the side of my house. None of that action's going on. I haven't seen no young YNs at the store posted. I haven't seen an Infinity fly past me in weeks. I'm sitting on my porch right now, and I'm watching kids outside playing. People outside walking with their kids, stuff I ain't never seen before living in my neighborhood. But all because we feel safe.
People outside walking with their kids. She's never seen that before in her neighbourhood. Think about that. And she's not alone. People have seen an immediate impact. The criminals are scared. The law-abiding folk are out reclaiming their neighbourhoods.
All I want to say is, Trump, you're doing your big thing, man. We got the kids back outside on their bikes. The lawnmower's back going. The dog's back barking. Memphis is looking real good out here, man. Hey, man, you did your big one, man. Appreciate you for helping cleaning up Memphis.
Fool, I ain't even gonna care when I say this, bruh. But since they brought the National Guard down to Memphis, I ain't heard no screeching tires out late at night. I ain't heard no gunshots.
Let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, we will speak about the momentous events in the Middle East shortly, but there is little doubt domestically Donald Trump's policies are having real impact, particularly when it comes to law and order, but they are still controversial policies, aren't they? They are getting a lot of heat from the media, from the activist class. Do you think he's going to continue this? Because he is paying a high price for implementing these policies.
He is, but I think he will because it strikes the heart of his agenda, whether it's getting the illegals out, that is his signature issue, and then not a byproduct, but sort of a ripple effect of that is also just restoring law and order in general, and that is so core to what he stands for. He knows the people support it. And as for the media or those protesters who, as you say, are mostly white, mostly not always boomers, like they seem to be elderly people, they are protesting. They will till the bitter end because it's a luxury belief for them to say things like, we don't want uniformed troops militarizing American cities, and like all those portrayals that are incorrect that they try to portray, that we're turning America into some sort of like military zone. They can afford to do that because they don't have to live with the consequences, like that lady, like those two gentlemen that you played, who can't even have their kids play in the backyard without fear of crossfire from gunshot wounds. So it's quite incredible, and they'll continue to do that. But I think as the ground support from the grassroots and more of those things come out, it's going to be harder and harder for them to continue those protests.
I mean, it's just astonishing that you've got someone who's never seen kids playing in the streets the whole time she's lived in that neighbourhood, who's not sat on her own porch feeling relaxed.
In America, which is so sad. And the homicide rate is 20, 30, 50, even 70 per 100,000. Which is crazy in the wealthiest nation on earth, in these cities that we know, West Philly, South Chicago, et cetera, Memphis. And the shining example that we talk about all the time is El Salvador, which was in that same range, and in less than 5 years, it's like here now. It's less than 2 per 100,000 homicides. So it can be done.
Yep.
And the question is, you just need the political will to do it.
Yeah, if they can do it in El Salvador, you can achieve it in Memphis, certainly. Now, let's hear what President Donald Trump's vision is for Gaza and how it will be rebuilt.
We've all agreed that supporting Gaza must be done to lift up the people themselves, but we don't want to fund anything having to do with the bloodshed, hatred, or terror, as has happened in the past. And for the same reason, we're also agreed that Gaza's reconstruction requires that it be demilitarized and that a new, honest civilian police force must be allowed to create a safe condition for the people in Gaza.
Kosha, what needs to happen for this peace deal to be enduring?
That is the centuries-old question, of course, that everybody wants to see. But this deal, the framework on this deal, is quite different from all the attempts, moderately successful or failed, in the past. And I think the main thing is really this coalition, cross-country and cross-religious coalition that Trump and his team put together, where you are going to have the financing come through from the Saudis, Emiratis, the Qataris. They have unlimited money, and that's sort of a pipeline that they're going to put in there in exchange for interests, their interests being served, and that's different than how it was done before. You'll have the Turks, who have the most advanced military in the region, providing security guarantees, at least initially, until that civilian police force is trained up and accepted. So that's something different, and it sort of rebalances, I think, with Israel versus the Arab countries who kind of have a seat at the table this time. And then the third thing is this redevelopment, and that's what everybody's waiting for. That's why all those nations, leaders were there from Europe and Canada and elsewhere for this peace board and getting a piece of it in some way where there's a little bit of skin in the game, and actual development, schools and hospitals and property and things like that, that's worth protecting and saving and sort of re-franchising the 2 million Palestinians that are going to stay there and be beneficiaries of that. I think those elements are different, and there's a lot of wood to chop in terms of implementing it. But if they implement that framework and that strategy, then it feels like the building blocks are different from years past, millennia past, and hopefully that's the formula for something that endures.
And it's fantastic for the US because not only do you have that cross-country coalition and the funding coming from a lot of those Arab nations, which means the American taxpayer isn't picking up the bill because this is something about America first. A lot of people thought Donald Trump is not living up to his America first promise, but he is, because by securing these peace deals, he is putting together the backdrop where it is not going to fall on the Americans to carry the load.
He did pay that price with his base, with the Iran bombing and all those things, short-lived, but first and foremost, boots on the ground.
Yeah.
We're very scarred from 20 years of those adventures in the Middle East, don't want that. And then secondly, the taxpayer and the funding. So pulling this together, you're absolutely right, on both levels, economic and military, being sort of the coordinator, being the chairman of the Board of Peace, like that's good. And our tax dollars and our troops not being in there is even better. So that, I think, is a big change, and hopefully that means it'll be enduring.
Now, the input of the Arab world, indeed the Muslim world, you've got countries like Indonesia having input into this peace deal. How important is that? And it seems that Iran is completely isolated here.
Yes. It is interesting because the divide of trust between the Israeli side for years and years and centuries and ostensibly the other side has been too wide. And it is difficult for someone like America that has historically been very pro-Israel and still is its strongest ally, coming in and playing that mediation role, rather than that sort of being the coordinator and letting these other sides bridge that divide is helpful. And having Muslim nations, Indonesia is one of the largest by population, though it's not in the Middle East, does provide a little bit more skin in the game and maybe acceptance and trust building for the Palestinians and whatever government, forms coming out of this. So it feels like it's better to have people that are actually either religiously attached to that region or geographically attached or both have more skin in the game rather than everything being directed by Big Brother America. That just hasn't worked very well, and the American people don't want that.
Now, let's have a look at some of the interactions President Donald Trump had with the world leaders. He almost forgot Keir Starmer was even there, the man who has done really nothing to help this peace deal. Watch this awkward moment.
Where's the United Kingdom? Where's Russia? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
That's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others.
Oh dear, I think he thought he was going to have his little moment and he was going to speak. You're not speaking, Keir. You had nothing to do with it. In fact, the likes of Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron from France, our own Prime Minister Albanese, really, they did not help this peace deal. They, if anything, set it back. And Marco Rubio made that point, didn't he? That every time one of them would pull a stunt, recognise the Palestinian state, the Palestinians would walk away from the negotiating table.
This moment, from a leadership perspective, belongs to President Trump. Everybody knows it, whether they admit it with celebration or they admit it begrudgingly. But you'll find these other people who want to sort of just steal a little bit of the credit. It's these world leaders. It's the Biden administration people were all over TV yesterday saying how they came up with the framework and they're glad to see that Trump and his team implemented the framework they were the originators of. So they're all kind of trying to do that. But everyone knows, and that's why you see him really seizing this moment. And if I were Keir Starmer, I might have come up with something a little bit different, like half a step back, stay in the frame, as opposed to completely turning his back and going that way. That didn't look good.
And there was the quintessential Trump-Macron handshake. It happened again. Let's have a look at it. It went on for some time. They've become famous for this, almost. They try to get the dominant position in the handshake. This one was another one that was notable. Have a look at this interaction right after the press conference. This is between Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump. Carney thanks Trump for upgrading him to president instead of calling him prime minister. And Trump responds as quick as a flash with, well, I could have called you governor.
So you going back?
I'll go back. I'm glad you upgraded me to president.
Did I say?
Great stuff. That's good. I started.
At least I didn't say that.
Yes, of course, referring to earlier this year, Koshar, when Trump was talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, and Carney would be governor then.
And now that he's achieved peace in the Middle East, maybe that will be back on the table, that agenda along with Greenland, we shall see. But it's funny because Americans, the word prime minister isn't as natural in the vocabulary, so he slipped out president. Carney made a joke, and it was really funny how he is quick. And he was like, hey,
quick as a flash, he came back with, I could have called you governor, so just be happy you got president instead of prime minister. That peace deal, that trade deal is still underway, isn't it? So, and Trump has spoken about this, about how he's using those tariffs, those trade deals to end wars and to get buy-in from different countries to do what America wants them to do. And I think, again, that's something that the Trump administration doesn't get credit for. There's more that goes into this than just saying we're going to have tariffs and we're going to raise X billion dollars per year from tariffs.
Yep.
It's a real negotiating tool.
It is, and it's his favorite tool because it's not the military. He really does hate war and wants to avoid U.S. troops on the ground as much as possible, which is a departure from previous administrations from both sides of the aisle. And tariffs is something he loves. He's being sued by it domestically. There is that case still making its way up to the Supreme Court saying you don't have the power to exercise tariffs, which is crazy when you think about it, because he has been using it, and he reportedly did use it even here, like bringing those Arab nations to the table back as we were just discussing. Reportedly, a big part of that was actually offering greater trade deals, not necessarily tariffs, but more incentives, financial incentives to invest in the U.S. He did that big trip in the Middle East a few months ago. It's all linked. It's all linked.
All linked.
You want to be in the good graces of the U.S. and get access to the most desirable consumer market in the world. And in exchange, if you're Canada and Mexico, stop the fentanyl. If you're the Middle East, come to the table and help secure peace. And on it goes. China is, of course, the tricky one, but that's another story for another day.
Yep. Now, Donald Trump features on Time magazine's front cover. Let's have a look. They write, the living Israeli hostages held in Gaza have been freed under the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan alongside a Palestinian prisoner release. The deal may become a signature achievement of Trump's second term, and it could mark a strategic turning point for the Middle East. All sorts of Captain Obvious commentary there. But Kosha, Time could not help themselves. They had to run a terrible picture, terrible angle. They are just so petty. They just couldn't say, okay, we're going to put him on the front page and it's going to be a complimentary story for once. He's going to be on the front cover. No, they had to put the most hideous photo they could find.
And I have to imagine he's very unhappy about that because he's somebody who's very, conscious of image. And he's put out some amazing, iconic pictures, thankfully. That this one is not as important as it would have been pre-social media. He's got the fight photo. He's got the mug shot. He's got beautiful inauguration photos. But it is petty. You could say that they at least were one step better than the Nobel Committee, who wouldn't even deign to award him the prize. At least these guys gave him the cover. But yes, I don't think it's a coincidence that they chose that very unflattering photo.
Kosha Gator, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.